The music didn't stop, but it faltered. A violin note trembled off key just long enough for 200 guests to fall silent. My cheeks stung. The taste of blood was sudden sharp metallic. Somewhere behind me, champagne flutes clinked against the marble floor. I didn't move. Not at first. My name is Mila Thompson. I'm 30 years old, and 5 seconds ago my father, James Thompson, retired Navy officer and king of family pride, slapped me across the face at my brother's wedding. "You selfish little girl," he hissed, his breath hot with whiskey and rage. "After everything we've done for you." I turned to face him, feeling the slow swell forming on my lip. My mother, Diane, had gone pale, her hands trembling not out of concern for me, but for the scene we were making. She glanced sideways toward the head table where the photographers had frozen in place. I didn't bother answering him. I just looked past him over his shoulder to the reason we were here. My brother, Ethan Thompson, still in his tailored tux, seated beside his new wife, Sarah. He didn't rise, didn't flinch. He was smirking. Of course he was. Minutes earlier, they had cornered me by the dessert table. My parents told me to hand over the penthouse. "You're just one person," Mila Diane had said, arranging a tray of cupcakes like it was any other day. "Ethan and Sarah need a place to build their life. Be reasonable." Reasonable. That's what they always called it when they took from me and gave to him. I told them no, calmly, directly. I bought that place with my own money. I live there. Ethan and Sarah can find something on their own. And now, this his handprint blooming across my face, and my mother still more worried about what the neighbors might say. I blinked once, then smiled, not out of grace or defiance, but out of clarity. "You'll regret this," I said loud enough for the head table to hear. "All of you will." Then I turned and walked out of the ballroom. My heels echoed like a gavel on tile, and nobody followed me. The cold hit me as I stepped outside, but I didn't shiver. I kept walking past the valet, past the floral arch my mother obsessed over for weeks, past the guests pretending not to look. My hands were steady, but something in me had shifted. Not broken, just settled. When I was 24, I started saving for that penthouse. 60-hour work weeks, no vacations, night shifts, weekends. I wrote back-end code for banks, then freelanced on the side building billing systems no one wanted to learn, but everyone wanted to own. I worked out of a tiny cafe on Main Street called Cedar and Stone, with long wooden tables, a view of the bay, and a barista named Luke who never asked questions. That cafe became my refuge, my anchor. I made my down payment 3 years later. No help from anyone. Not from my father who said I should be investing in a future with a man. Not from my mother who called the place too cold, too modern, too far from the family. I moved in alone, furnished every corner with purpose. That penthouse was the first space that was truly mine. And Ethan, my brother, had bounced through 5 business ideas by then. The last one involved drones and coffee delivery. The one before that NFTs for dogs, I think. My parents bailed him out each time quietly, relentlessly. He lived rent-free in a condo they owned called himself Between Ventures. But somehow I was the one being selfish. They never noticed when I stopped showing up on holidays. When my texts turned 1 word short, when I politely turned down every Sunday dinner, every call that started with "we were thinking" and ended with "Ethan could use your help." They thought I was quiet because I had nothing to say. Truth is, I stayed quiet because I knew one day I'd need them to forget how much I'd learned while they weren't looking. I didn't drive home. The penthouse felt too loud with memory too exposed. I couldn't face the silence it would offer me tonight. Instead, I took a left at the waterfront and pulled into the gravel lot behind Cedar and Stone. The cafe was quiet this late, almost closing. A single bulb above the counter cast a golden hue over polished wood, and there was Luke drying glasses with the same quiet rhythm he always kept. Mid-30s, patient-eyed, the kind of man who listened more than he spoke. He looked up as I entered, and for a second his face changed, not surprise concern. "You okay?" he asked, already reaching for the mug he always used for me. "My father slapped me," I said, walking slowly to my usual table by the window. "At my brother's wedding because I wouldn't give them my penthouse." Luke didn't say anything at first. He just placed the mug down black coffee 2 sugars, then added a chocolate muffin beside it. "On the house," he said. You look like you need it." I sat there a long while staring out at the water. The reflection of the bay lights flickered like someone was shaking the surface, and for the first time since the ballroom, my chest cracked open. But I didn't cry from hurt. I cried because I was furious. For years I had done everything right, earned my place, asked for nothing. And this was my reward, being smacked in public because I refused to hand over what I built. They didn't want a daughter. They wanted an asset. Somewhere between the coffee cooling in front of me and the muffin untouched beside it, a new clarity settled. If they could take from me that easily, what would they try next? I opened my laptop. My hands didn't shake, and in the soft hum of the cafe, I began to plan. The next morning, the doorman called before I'd finished my coffee. "Ms. Thompson, your parents are here." They weren't announced. Of course they weren't. I dressed with care. Slacks, dark blouse, hair pulled back. Clean lines, quiet power. When I opened the door to meet them in the hallway, my father was already pacing, jaw clenched. James Thompson, former captain, still acting like the world owed him obedience. "Where are you going?" my mother asked, voice sharp beneath her pearls. "We need to talk about last night." "Work," I replied, locking the door behind me. "Some of us actually have jobs." My father stepped in close, grabbing my arm. "Don't you take that tone." "After your behavior yesterday." I pulled away, calm as glass. "Touch me again and I'll call security." He hesitated. I didn't. "There are cameras, at the country club. High resolution, multiple angles." That stopped him. Diane, usually so poised, paled visibly. "You wouldn't," she said. "Try me." I turned toward the elevator. "Oh, and change the locks if you want. It won't matter. Everything valuable is already in secure storage." As the doors slid shut between us, I watched them blink. Not angry, confused, like they were just now realizing I wasn't the same girl they used to corner in the kitchen and guilt into giving up weekends' money silence. This time, they didn't follow, and that was their first mistake. I didn't answer their calls. Not that day, not the day after. At first, the messages were predictable. My mother tried guilt. "Mila, come back inside. You're embarrassing the family." Then Ethan, my brother, weighed in. "Don't be dramatic, sis. We can talk about this like adults." And then Sarah, "He deserves that penthouse more than you. He's starting a family." I read each message once, then muted the thread and never replied. Instead, I drove back to Cedar and Stone, ordered the same coffee, and claimed my usual seat. Luke gave me a silent nod. He didn't ask questions this time, just brought over my drink and left me to my screen. That afternoon, I opened 3 tabs, one for my lawyer, one for my financial advisor, one for a real estate listing I'd bookmarked 6 months ago but never pursued, a luxury oceanfront apartment complex called Bayside Towers. It had been Ethan and Sarah's latest obsession. They'd toured it in April, raved about the glass balconies and heated floors. They couldn't afford it, of course, but they'd been angling to rent one of the corner units, hoping my parents would co-sign. Now I was making an offer on the entire building. By sunset, I'd submitted a formal bid backed by years of savings and 2 investment portfolios they didn't even know I had. That night, I pushed a major code update to a private GitHub repo, a property management platform I'd been quietly building in my spare time. The same idea Ethan once tried to borrow for his failed startup. By the time I closed my laptop, phase 1 was complete. They thought I was spiraling, that I'd come crawling back. But I wasn't unraveling. I was constructing. Not revenge, not chaos, a boundary made of brick fiber cable and legally binding contracts. They had wanted my home. I was about to show them what I really owned. 10 days passed in silence. Not true silence. There were still messages, still calls from blocked numbers and mutual friends with nervous voices. Ethan sent a cousin to check in. Sarah posted vague jabs on social media about entitled people who don't support family. But I didn't respond. I was busy by then. The offer on Bayside Towers had been accepted. The paperwork was moving. My lawyer, Emily Carter, efficient as ever, had flagged every clause. The complex would be mine within the month, but that wasn't the part that kept me up at night. The real rot was deeper. Years ago, when Ethan was launching his now-defunct crypto platform, CoinPeak, he came to me for technical advice. He said he needed someone to look over his architecture. I offered help. I reviewed his documents, shared a few of my own interface mock-ups, assuming he just needed inspiration. He took them rebranded, then built a front-facing system that was 80% my original code, untested, unsecure, and irresponsibly modified. When CoinPeak collapsed spectacularly last year, he claimed market volatility. But now that I'd gained access to a few of his old servers, he never changed his admin passwords because of course he didn't. I found more than bad coding. I found records, shell corporations' fake consulting invoices, large transfers to a familiar business name, Thompson and Partners LLC, my father's side business. They hadn't just stolen from me. They'd laundered investor money through my family's name. I called Emily. If I file this with the SEC, it'll bring them both down. She was quiet a moment. Do you want that I want them to stop? I want them to understand I'm not afraid of them anymore. Then I sent one more email to my mother. Subject line: We should talk. She showed up the next morning. Diane Thompson, pearls tied at the throat, face drawn tighter. She tried to open with tears. I let her, but when I turned my laptop toward her and showed her the financial records, she stopped mid-sentence. You don't understand, she said. No, I said, voice steady. You don't? Fraud isn't a mistake, and neither is raising a son who thinks stealing from family is strategy. Her hands trembled in her lap. I closed the laptop. We were just getting started. Diane sat still for a long time. The tears had stopped. The softness she walked in with motherly grief-wounded dignity had vanished. What remained was calculation. She wasn't here to heal. She was here to contain. What do you want, Mila? She asked finally. Her voice was tight, not broken, controlled. I want peace, I said. No more calls, no more flying monkeys, no more social media updates from Sarah about how I abandoned the family. She blinked. The penthouse is mine, legally, morally, factually. It's off limits. My finances, my work, my future off limits. And if we don't agree to that, I looked at her, then really looked at the woman who had always chosen silence over truth. Etiquette over protection, who taught me that being a daughter meant knowing when to give up what you loved, quietly with a smile. I gave her none of that. Now I have documents that show Dad's involvement in Ethan's fraud. I have server logs, payment trails, names, screenshots, and I have video of him slapping me in a public venue with witnesses. You'd destroy your own family, she whispered. No, I said. You did that when you told me to give up my home. When Dad raised his hand, when Ethan watched and smiled. Her face crumpled just slightly, like something inside her had shifted, but not enough to reach her mouth. I closed the laptop gently. The sound echoed more than I expected. I'm not asking for anything unreasonable, I said, standing. Just distance, just silence. She didn't respond, just rose, gathered her purse, and walked out. I stood by the window for a long time after watched her disappear into a black sedan. No slammed doors, no shouted names, only quiet, and for once it belonged to me. 1 week passed, then 2. I didn't hear from Diane. James didn't call. Ethan didn't post. But the silence wasn't peace. It was pressure building behind a dam. The first crack came in an email from my real estate agent. Subject: eviction notice processed. Unit 14C. Ethan and Sarah had stopped paying rent. 2 months delinquent. Ignored notices. Blamed a miscommunication with the leasing office. What they didn't know, what no one in that building knew, was that I was the new owner. The name on their final notice was mine. I didn't gloat. I didn't interfere. I let the process unfold the way it was designed to. Quiet, legal, permanent. They moved out in silence. No Instagram photos, no long goodbye. Just one text from Ethan the night they left. Mom told me what you're doing. You can't prove anything. I stared at the message for a while, then attached a screenshot server logs bearing his full name, time-stamped file access account IDs. I sent it without a word. His reply came minutes later. What do you want? I answered in 3 distance. Total distance. No more demands. No more guilt trips disguised as family dinners. No more pretending we were something we hadn't been in years. He tried one last time. You've changed. I looked at the message, then wrote, "No." I just stopped pretending. Then I silenced the thread and archived the conversation. That night, I walked out onto the penthouse balcony. The city lights were soft, almost kind. I thought of how many years I'd spent trying to be good, useful enough. Now, I didn't need to be anything but free. They had tried to take my home and ended up losing their own. It was a Tuesday evening when the knock came. Not urgent, not angry, just hesitant. I checked the security camera. James Thompson standing alone in the hallway, shoulders squared like habit, but his hands kept adjusting his jacket like he didn't know what to do with them. I could have ignored it, but curiosity won. I opened the door but didn't step aside. He looked older than I remembered. His jaw wasn't set like usual. His eyes didn't scan the room like he owned it. 5 minutes, he said. That's all I'm asking. I said nothing, but I didn't close the door either. They're moving back in with us, he said finally. Ethan and Sarah couldn't keep the apartment. I know, I replied, voice flat. I own the building. He blinked as if the sentence didn't compute. Then something behind his eyes gave way. You, he said quietly. But how? Because I'm good at what I do, Dad. I always was. You just never noticed. He looked down. The silence between us stretched. Not hostile, not awkward, just real. Your mother misses you? We all do. No, I said. You miss having someone to push around, someone to sacrifice for Ethan. That person doesn't live here anymore. He nodded slowly. I was wrong, he said, about a lot of things. The slap, the way we treated you covering for Ethan, I've lost everything because of it. It was true. After I showed Diane what I had, James had stepped down from his company's board. The whispers in his circles had started. His clean record no longer clean. I didn't release anything, I said. The threat was enough. He looked up, then really looked. You haven't lost everything, I added. You still have your golden child. Isn't that what matters? He exhaled shaky. We made mistakes. No, I said. You made choices. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. Your mother wanted you to have this. It's an invitation. Her birthday dinner. I took it but didn't open it. I'll think about it. And I closed the door. Not loud, not fast, but with finality. I held the envelope for 3 days before I opened it. No note, just cream cardstock with my mother's handwriting, delicate cursive that always looked more like a performance than a signature. Please join us for Diane Thompson's 63rd birthday dinner. Family only. I almost laughed, but I didn't throw it away. The night of the dinner, I arrived late, 15 minutes after everyone had already been seated. I wore black, not dramatic, not mourning, just neutral present, but untouchable. Ethan and Sarah sat in the far corner, their clothes once designer now department store simple. She didn't meet my eye. He barely looked up. My father James stayed sober. He nodded when I entered, nothing more. My mother smiled too wide too quickly, as if the room might shatter if I didn't play along, but I didn't perform. I observed. No one asked me questions. No one gave me orders, and when I left early quietly without fanfare, no one followed me. A few months later, I hosted a dinner of my own. It wasn't in their home. It wasn't family only. It was on my balcony, my penthouse. There was wine laughter, the sharp scent of roasted garlic and soft jazz playing low in the background. Luke came, of course. So did Emily, my lawyer, and Claire, the real estate agent who helped me secure the building. People who never expected me to give up pieces of myself just to earn space at their table. We toasted as the city lit up beneath us. To Mila, Luke said, raising his glass, "Who turned a slap into an empire?" I smiled, not out of victory, but out of peace. Not silence, not surrender choice. They tried to take my home, but instead they gave me my freedom. Mila Thompson learns a profound lesson about self-worth and boundaries in the face of familial manipulation and entitlement. Initially pressured to sacrifice her hard-earned penthouse for her brother Ethan's benefit, Mila faces betrayal when her father publicly humiliates her for refusing. This pivotal moment clarifies that her family views her not as an equal, but as a resource to exploit. Through her quiet resilience, Mila realizes that compliance and silence had enabled their demands, but asserting her boundaries backed by her financial independence and evidence of their wrongdoing shifts the power dynamic. By purchasing Bayside Towers and exposing her brother's fraud, she reclaims her agency not out of vengeance, but to protect her peace. Mila's journey teaches her that true freedom comes from refusing to be diminished even by those closest to her. She learns to prioritize her own achievements and surround herself with people who value her without expectation. Ultimately, Mila's lesson is that self-respect forged through hard work and unwavering boundaries is more powerful than familial loyalty when that loyalty demands her erasure. Her empire built on choice rather than obligation becomes her sanctuary.
The notification popped up on my phone at 3:47 p.m. while I was reviewing quarterly reports for Azure Coast Holdings. Instagram notification. Mom posted a new photo. I recognized it immediately. The Azure Coast Resort booking confirmation screen. I should know. I'd owned the property for 3 years. Family vacation planning. She'd captioned it with 12 heart emojis. What she didn't include was the conversation I'd overheard through her speakerphone 30 minutes earlier. She's too poor for family vacation, Mom had explained to Aunt Linda and Aunt Carol while scrolling through resort packages. We can't afford extra rooms for failures like Sarah. She'll have to find her own accommodations if she wants to come. Smart thinking, Rebecca, Aunt Linda had agreed. Why waste money on someone who can't contribute anyway? Exactly. This trip is for successful family members only, Mom had declared. Sarah can stay home with her minimum wage lifestyle. I'd been standing in my kitchen, listening to this conversation through the thin walls of our duplex, while simultaneously reviewing the Azure Coast Resort's monthly revenue reports. The irony wasn't lost on me. 3 years ago, when the resort had been facing bankruptcy during the pandemic, I'd purchased it through my investment company for $12.3 million. The previous owners had been desperate to sell, and I'd seen the potential in the beachfront property. What my family didn't know was that their minimum wage daughter had been running a successful consulting business for nearly a decade, generating enough income to quietly build a real estate portfolio worth $47 million. The family group chat had been buzzing all afternoon with vacation excitement. Mom had created a planning document with room assignments, activity schedules, and cost breakdowns. My name appeared nowhere on the list. Sarah, Mom had texted me privately, if you want to join us for vacation, you'll need to book your own room. We can't subsidize your participation anymore. I'd responded simply, understood. Have a wonderful time. What I hadn't mentioned was that I'd been the one subsidizing their successful lifestyles for years. Dad's construction business had been failing since 2019, surviving only because of the anonymous contracts I'd arranged through my network. Mom's boutique had been hemorrhaging money until mysterious bulk orders started appearing from shell companies I controlled. My brother Marcus's law practice had been struggling until high-paying corporate clients, all my contacts, began seeking his services. They thought their recent success was due to hard work and superior business acumen. In reality, they'd been living off my secret financial support while treating me like the family charity case. The Azure Coast Resort was my favorite acquisition. The 200-room beachfront property had been renovated to 5-star standards under my direction. Every detail had been carefully designed. The infinity pools, the spa, the private beach access, the 3 restaurants. I'd personally approved every hire from the general manager to the housekeeping staff. And now my family was planning to spend their vacation there, completely unaware that their poor daughter owned every square foot of the property they were booking. The next morning I was in my home office reviewing the resort's guest reservations when I saw it. Thompson Family Reservation, 8 guests for suites, presidential package. They'd booked the most expensive accommodation tier, totaling $18,000 for the week. The same family that claimed they couldn't afford an extra room for me had somehow found money for the premium package. I picked up my phone and called Marcus, the resort's general manager. Good morning, Marcus. I see we have a Thompson family reservation for next week. Yes, Ms. Williams. 8 guests, 4 suites in the presidential wing. They specifically requested our most exclusive services. I need you to call the primary contact, Rebecca Thompson, and inform her that the owner has requested their reservation be cancelled immediately. Of course, any particular reason I should provide. Simply state that the owner has requested their removal. Nothing more. I'll handle it personally. 20 minutes later my phone rang. Mom's contact photo filled the screen. A selfie she'd taken at her boutique, back when she thought her business was thriving on its own merit. "Sarah," she said breathlessly, "you'll never believe what just happened. The Azure Coast Resort just called and canceled our entire reservation. They said the owner requested our removal." "That's terrible, Mom. Did they give you a reason?" "No. The manager just said owner's orders and hung up. We've lost our entire deposit, $3000, and it's too late to book anywhere else decent for next week." I maintained my calm tone. "I'm sorry to hear that. Did you try asking them to reconsider?" "I called back 3 times. They won't even discuss it. The manager said the decision is final and non-negotiable." Her voice was rising with panic. "Sarah, we need to find somewhere else to stay. Do you have any ideas?" The irony was exquisite. The woman who'd declared me too poor for vacation was now asking for my help after being ejected from my own resort. "Well," I said thoughtfully, "I might know someone who could help. Let me make some calls." What I actually did was text Marcus. "Please inform Mrs. Thompson that due to the owner's generosity, alternative accommodations have been arranged at the Seaside Inn for their stay. Rooms will be complimentary, but they'll need to cover their own meals and activities." The Seaside Inn was a modest 2-star property I'd purchased 6 months ago specifically for renovation. It was clean and safe but decidedly basic, the kind of place my family would normally never consider. An hour later, Mom called back ecstatic. "Sarah, you're amazing. Somehow the resort manager found us alternative accommodations. It's not as fancy but it's free. How did you manage that?" "I know people in the hospitality industry," I said simply. The family group chat exploded with gratitude and speculation about my mysterious connections. Suddenly, the daughter they deemed too poor to include had somehow salvaged their vacation. But I wasn't finished. The next morning I called my assistant, Jennifer. "I need you to arrange something for next week. I'll be staying at the Azure Coast Resort, Presidential Suite. I want full VIP treatment and I want it documented. Of course. Should I arrange for the photographer to capture your arrival?" "Yes. Make sure the resort's social media team posts everything. I want my family to see exactly who owns their dream vacation spot." Meanwhile, at the Seaside Inn, my family was discovering the reality of their free accommodations. The rooms were small, the amenities basic, and the breakfast continental. Mom had posted increasingly strained photos, trying to maintain the illusion of a luxurious vacation while clearly struggling with the downgrade. Having such a unique experience at this charming local property, she'd captioned a photo of her cramped room. The comments from relatives were telling, "Looks different from the photos you showed us," and "Are you sure this is the same place?" On Wednesday morning, Azure Coast Resort's Instagram account posted a series of photos. "Welcome back to our valued owner, Ms. Sarah Williams. Enjoying another perfect stay at Azure Coast's Presidential Suite." The photos showed me lounging by the private pool, dining at the exclusive owner's table, and being personally greeted by the entire management team. The caption included details about my ownership of the property and my recent expansion of the resort's amenities. My phone started ringing at 8:23 a.m. "Sarah." Mom's voice was breathless, panicked. "I just saw. Did you buy a resort?" "I own several properties, Mom. Azure Coast is one of them." "You own the resort? The one that kicked us out?" "Yes. The one you said I was too poor to afford a room at." There was a long silence. I could hear Dad and my brother talking frantically in the background. "But, how? Your job. You said you work in consulting." "I do work in consulting. My firm has been quite successful. Successful enough to acquire a $47 million real estate portfolio over the past decade." $47 million? Her voice was barely a whisper. "Yes. Including the resort you're not staying at, the hotel where Marcus works, and ironically, the construction contracts that saved Dad's business in 2020. Another silence. "Then, you saved Dad's business? Along with your boutique and Marcus's law practice? Those mysterious new clients and bulk orders? Those came from companies I control." I could hear her explaining this to the others. The background conversation grew louder, more frantic. "Sarah, we had no idea. That I was successful? Yes, I noticed. You assumed I was poor because I chose to live modestly and work quietly. You never asked about my actual career or income. But why didn't you tell us? Because I wanted to see how you'd treat me without knowing about my money. And I learned everything I needed to know. We never meant. Mom, you literally told your sisters I was too poor for family vacation, while planning to stay at my resort, using money from businesses I've been subsidizing. The call went quiet except for muffled arguing in the background. What do you want from us? She finally asked. Nothing. You've made it clear that family love is conditional on financial status. So I'm removing the conditions. What does that mean? It means the anonymous contracts keeping Dad's business afloat end next month. The bulk orders supporting your boutique stop immediately. And Marcus's corporate clients will be informed that their retainer arrangements are terminated. You can't do that. Our businesses will fail? Probably. But according to you, they were already successful on their own merit. This shouldn't change anything. Sarah, please. I'm also pulling my investment from Uncle Robert's restaurant, Aunt Linda's real estate ventures, and the college fund I'd been building for my nephew. Since I'm apparently too poor to be part of this family. We made a mistake. No, Mom. You showed me exactly how much my family relationships are worth. And now you're seeing exactly how much your financial independence is worth. I hung up and immediately called my business manager. Patricia, I need you to execute the Thompson family withdrawal plan we discussed. All financial support terminates immediately. Send formal notices to all affected parties. Understood. Should I CC your family on the documentation? Yes. I want them to see exactly how much they've been receiving without knowing it. Within hours, the financial impacts began cascading through my family. Dad received termination notices for 3 major contracts worth $200,000 annually. Mom's boutique lost orders worth $50,000 per quarter. Marcus's law firm was informed that 5 corporate clients would not be renewing retainers totaling $75,000 annually. Uncle Robert learned that his restaurant's mysterious investor would be withdrawing support, meaning the end of the $5,000 monthly subsidies that had kept him afloat. Aunt Linda discovered that her real estate deals had been funded by loans from companies I controlled, loans that were now being called in. The family group chat went silent. Then one by one they started calling. Dad first. Sarah, honey, I think there's been a misunderstanding about those contracts. Marcus second. Sis, my corporate clients are saying something about terminated retainers? Can we talk? Uncle Robert third. Sarah, sweetheart, my restaurant investor is pulling out. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that. Each conversation followed the same pattern. Shock, denial, bargaining, and finally, desperate pleading. They'd all assumed their recent success was due to their own efforts. None of them had questioned the sudden influx of high-paying clients and mysterious opportunities. But the most telling call came from Aunt Linda at 11:47 p.m. Sarah, I need to ask you something and I need you to be honest. Of course. How long have you been supporting all of us? About 5 years actively. I started small, helping Dad get contracts, sending customers to Mom's boutique. As my business grew, I expanded the support. Why? Because you're my family. I thought family helped each other. And we never knew? I specifically structured everything to be anonymous. I wanted you to maintain your dignity and independence. But we treated you like I was poor. Like I was a failure. Like I didn't belong. There was a long pause. Sir, we were wrong. Completely wrong. Is there any way to fix this? I don't know, Aunt Linda. You spent years making me feel worthless because you thought I had no money. Now that you know I have money, suddenly I'm worth treating with respect. It wasn't about the money. It was entirely about the money. Every cruel comment, every exclusion, every dismissive remark was based on your assumption that I was financially unsuccessful. She started crying. We're going to lose everything. Maybe. Or maybe you'll discover what you're actually capable of when you're not relying on my secret support. The calls continued for 3 days. Each family member went through the same emotional progression. Anger at being deceived, bargaining for continued support, and finally, desperate apologies. But the most surprising call came from my nephew Tyler, Marcus's 16-year-old son. Aunt Sarah? I saw the Instagram post about you owning that resort. Yes. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. About how everyone treated you. I never said anything, but I always thought it was wrong. Thank you, Tyler. That means a lot. Are you really cutting off my college fund? I paused. Tyler had always been kind to me even when his parents weren't. Tyler, your college fund wasn't connected to your parents' businesses. That money was always specifically for you. Really? Really? In fact, there's enough there for a full ride to any school you choose, plus graduate school if you want. Even after everything? Tyler, you never treated me badly. Why would I punish you for your parents' behavior? Can I ask you something else? Sure. Were you really poor or were you just pretending? I was never poor, Tyler. I just chose to live below my means and let my family make their own assumptions. That's actually pretty smart. You got to see how everyone really felt about you. Exactly. And now I know exactly where I stand with everyone. 2 weeks later, the family dynamics had completely shifted. Mom had closed her boutique after losing the bulk orders that had been keeping it profitable. Dad's construction business was scrambling to replace the terminated contracts. Marcus was working twice as hard to find new clients. But the most interesting development was their sudden flood of attention toward me. Invitations to family dinners arrived daily. Calls just to check in became frequent. Relatives who hadn't spoken to me in years were suddenly interested in my life and career. The transformation was so obvious it was almost comical. During one family dinner, my first in months, the conversation was carefully, artificially focused on my achievements. Everyone wanted to hear about my business, my properties, my success story. The same relatives who'd spent years changing the subject when I tried to discuss my work were now hanging on every word. "We're so proud of you, Sarah," Mom announced to the table. "We always knew you'd be successful." I set down my fork. "Really? Because 3 weeks ago you told Aunt Linda I was too poor for family vacation." The table went silent. "That was a misunderstanding," Mom started. "No, it wasn't. It was an accurate representation of how you all viewed me. The only thing that's changed is your knowledge of my bank account." "Sarah," Dad interjected, "family is about more than money." "You're right, Dad. It is about more than money. It's about respect, support, and unconditional love. Things I provided for all of you and things you never provided for me." "We love you," Marcus began. Do you love what I can do for you financially?" No one answered. "Here's what's going to happen," I continued. "I'm willing to rebuild relationships with family members who can prove they value me as a person, not as a bank account. But the financial support is permanently ended." "What do you mean, prove it?" Aunt Linda asked. "I mean demonstrate through your actions that you respect me regardless of my income. Show me that your love isn't conditional on my ability to solve your financial problems." "How?" Mom asked quietly. "That's for you to figure out. But I'll give you a hint. It starts with genuine apologies for years of dismissive treatment, and it continues with consistent respect moving forward." 6 months later, the family dynamics had settled into a new pattern. Some relationships had been rebuilt on healthier foundations. Tyler and I remained close, and he'd started working part-time at one of my properties to learn business skills. A few cousins had reached out with genuine apologies and efforts to reconnect as people, not as financial opportunities. But others had revealed their true priorities. Mom and Dad maintained minimal contact, clearly frustrated by my refusal to resume financial support. Marcus had initially tried to rebuild our relationship, but his efforts had decreased as it became clear I wouldn't be referring business to his firm. The most telling development came 8 months after the resort incident. Azure Coast Resort had been featured in Travel Plus Leisure as one of the country's top destination properties. The article included a profile of me as a successful young entrepreneur who'd built a real estate empire while maintaining a deliberately low profile. Mom called within hours of the magazine hitting stands. "Sarah, I saw the article. We need to talk." "About what?" "About forgiveness. About family. About moving forward." "I'm listening." "We made mistakes. Big mistakes. But we're family and family forgives." "You're right that family forgives. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. And it doesn't mean returning to old patterns." "What do you want from us?" "I wanted you to love me when you thought I was poor. You didn't. I wanted you to include me when you thought I had nothing to offer. You didn't. I wanted you to treat me with basic respect regardless of my perceived status. You didn't." People change. Do they? Or do they just adjust their behavior based on changed circumstances? She was quiet for a long moment. Sarah, what if we started over? What if we tried to build something better? I'm open to that, Mom. But it has to be built on honesty. No more assumptions about my finances. No more conditional love based on what I can provide. No more treating family members differently based on their perceived success. Deal. And it has to be proven over time through actions, not just words. I understand. Today, 2 years after the resort incident, my relationships with family members exist across a spectrum. Some have genuinely changed and rebuilt connections based on mutual respect. Others have proven that their interest in me remains primarily financial. But the most important change has been in me. I no longer feel the need to prove my worth through secret financial support. I no longer accept dismissive treatment in the name of family loyalty. And I no longer hide my success out of fear that it might change how people treat me. Because here's what I learned. People who love you conditionally will find conditions regardless of your circumstances. And people who respect you genuinely will do so whether you're rich or poor. The Azure Coast Resort still gets regular visits from family members who book standard rooms and pay their own way. They're always treated well by the staff, but they no longer receive special treatment based on their relationship to me. And sometimes when I'm sitting in my presidential suite, watching the sunset over the ocean I own, I think about that phone call when Mom asked why the owner had requested their removal. She still doesn't fully understand that the owner wasn't rejecting them because of who they were. The owner was simply treating them exactly how they'd treated her. The notification pinged on my phone at 11:47 a.m. while I was reviewing quarterly reports in my cramped office above the used bookstore. LinkedIn notification. Rebecca Williams shared a new post. I clicked on it, already knowing what I'd find. Rebecca had been on a social media tear lately, documenting every milestone of Williams Tech's meteoric rise. This time, it was a professionally shot photo of her standing in front of her company's sleek glass headquarters, arms crossed, wearing that confident smile she'd perfected for investor meetings. The caption read, "Celebrating 5 years of family success without the DVB. Rocket, sometimes you have to leave people behind to reach your full potential. Williams Tech just closed our Series C at a $400 million valuation. Grateful for the family members who believed in the vision from day one. Hashtag entrepreneurship, hashtag family business, hashtag tech success, hashtag growth mindset." 847 likes and counting. Comments flooding in from industry leaders, fellow entrepreneurs and family members. All praising Rebecca's vision, her leadership, her incredible success story. I scrolled through the responses. Inspirational. You've built something amazing, Rebecca. Mom. So proud of my brilliant daughter. Flex biceps. Dead. Rebecca Williams is a force of nature. Honored to be part of this journey. Uncle Jim. Can't wait to see what you build next. The Williams family legacy continues. Cousin Mark. I clicked the heart icon and typed my own response. Congratulations. So happy to see your success. 3 minutes later, Rebecca had liked my comment. 20 minutes after that, she deleted it. The irony wasn't lost on me. The deadweight she was referring to was sitting in a 200-square-foot office, wearing a 5-year-old sweater, eating a peanut butter sandwich for lunch. While she stood in her million-dollar headquarters, celebrating a $400 million valuation funded entirely by my money. My phone buzzed again. Text from Mom. Did you see Rebecca's post? Isn't it wonderful how well she's doing? I replied, yes, very impressive. Mom, I wish you could find something you're passionate about like Rebecca has. She's really made something of herself. The thing was, I had found something I was passionate about. I was passionate about identifying undervalued technology companies and providing growth capital to help them scale. I'd been doing it for 8 years, building a portfolio worth just over $3 billion across various investment vehicles and shell companies. What I wasn't passionate about was taking credit for it. Rebecca's success story was compelling and she told it well. Fresh out of MIT with a computer science degree, she'd identified a gap in the enterprise software market and built Williams Tech from her garage. She'd attracted top talent, secured major clients, and scaled the company from startup to unicorn in just 5 years. What she left out of her story was where the funding had come from. Williams Tech had raised capital through 3 funding rounds. A $5 million seed round, a $25 million Series A, and a $175 million Series B. Rebecca owned 47% of the company, giving her a paper net worth of approximately $188 million. The lead investor in all three rounds was Meridian Ventures, a private equity firm that specialized in enterprise software companies. Meridian had provided $205 million in total funding to Williams Tech, making them the largest shareholder after Rebecca herself. What Rebecca didn't know was that Meridian Ventures was a subsidiary of Pacific Capital Group, which was owned by Cascade Holdings, which was controlled by a trust I'd established during graduate school at Stanford. I was Rebecca's anonymous investor. I was the source of every dollar that had built her empire. I'd first identified Williams Tech during their seed round, when Rebecca was pitching to anyone who would listen. Her technology was solid, her market analysis was thorough, and her business model was scalable. She was also my sister, though she didn't know I was evaluating her company. The decision to invest hadn't been personal. Williams Tech was exactly the kind of opportunity one looked for. Strong fundamentals, experienced leadership, large addressable market, clear competitive advantages. The fact that Rebecca was family had actually made me more cautious, not less. I'd conducted extra due diligence to ensure I wasn't letting emotion cloud my judgment. But as the company grew and Rebecca's attitude toward me deteriorated, the investment had become more complicated. It started small. Comments about my lack of ambition, when I chose to work part-time at the literacy nonprofit instead of pursuing a traditional career. Jokes about my modest lifestyle, when I showed up to family gatherings in my old Honda Civic while she drove her new Tesla. Then it escalated. Rebecca began positioning herself as the family success story, the one who'd inherited Dad's entrepreneurial drive while I'd inherited Mom's content to coast through life approach. She started giving interviews about the importance of surrounding yourself with growth-minded people and distancing yourself from those who don't share your vision. The deadweight comments had started about 2 years ago, always carefully indirect but unmistakably targeted. Sometimes family members hold you back without meaning to. Not everyone is cut out for the startup lifestyle. You have to be willing to outgrow people who don't evolve with you. Last Christmas had been the breaking point. Rebecca had stood up during dinner to give a toast about Williams Tech's success, specifically thanking the family members who had supported her vision from the beginning, while pointedly avoiding eye contact with me. She'd concluded with, "Success requires making difficult choices about who gets to be part of your journey." Now, 6 months later, she was posting about family success without the deadweight to her 15,000 LinkedIn followers, publicly positioning herself as the visionary entrepreneur who'd overcome the burden of unsupportive family members. I opened my laptop and logged into the secure portal for Pacific Capital Group. My investment dashboard showed the current Williams Tech position: $205 million in deployed capital across 3 funding rounds, representing a 52% ownership stake in the company through various investment vehicles. I pulled up Rebecca's most recent pitch deck, the one she'd presented to Meridian Ventures 3 months ago when requesting the Series C funding that would take Williams Tech to their $400 million valuation. Slide 12 was titled Family Legacy, featuring photos of her with Dad at his old accounting firm, Uncle Jim at his small business, and various other family members who'd inspired her entrepreneurial journey. I wasn't in any of the photos. The irony was that Rebecca's entire business philosophy was built around the importance of smart capital allocation and strategic partnerships. She'd written blog posts about how finding the right investors was crucial to startup success. She'd spoken at conferences about the value of having aligned financial partners who understood your vision. She just didn't know that her primary aligned financial partner was the sister she'd publicly dismissed as deadweight. I scrolled through more of her recent LinkedIn posts. There was one from last week about surrounding yourself with people who elevate your thinking. Another from 2 weeks ago about the courage to leave limiting relationships behind. And one from last month with the caption, "Some people are content with small dreams. Entrepreneurs aren't." Each post had hundreds of likes and dozens of comments from industry leaders praising Rebecca's wisdom and insight. She'd built a personal brand around being the visionary entrepreneur who'd overcome obstacles and unsupportive people to achieve massive success. The obstacle she'd overcome was me. The unsupportive person holding her back was the same person writing the checks that funded her success. I opened a new browser tab and logged into my secure messaging system. My wealth management team at Blackstone Capital was available 24/7 for high-priority portfolio decisions. Need to schedule a call regarding Williams' tech position, I typed. Considering strategic changes to our investment structure. The response came back within 10 minutes. Available for call at your convenience. Current position is $205 million across Series AC funding rounds. Company performance remains strong. Is this related to the recent Series C valuation? I scheduled the call for 3 p.m., then spent the next few hours reviewing Williams Tech's financial statements, market position and growth projections. From a purely investment perspective, the company was performing exceptionally well. Revenue was growing at 85% year-over-year, profit margins were expanding, and they just signed their largest enterprise client ever. Rebecca was, objectively, an excellent CEO. She'd built a valuable company, made smart strategic decisions and created significant value for investors. The fact that she was using that success to publicly humiliate me was a separate issue from her business competence. At 3 p.m. I called my portfolio manager at Blackstone. Miss Chin, Marcus Richardson answered. Thank you for making time today. I understand you want to discuss Williams Tech. I'm considering liquidating our position, I said. There was a pause. The entire position? That's $205 million in deployed capital. I understand the magnitude. May I ask what's driving this decision? The company's fundamentals remain very strong. I considered how to explain this. It's a strategic alignment issue. With the management team? Something like that. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Miss Chen, as your fiduciary advisor, I need to point out that Williams Tech is one of our highest performing investments. The Series C valuation represents a 4.2x return on our Series A investment. If they go public next year as planned, we're projecting returns in the 8-10x range. I understand the financial implications. And you still want to liquidate? I want to understand what liquidation would look like. What are our options? Well, Marcus said, we could sell our position to another investor, though finding someone willing to take on $205 million in secondary shares might take time. Or we could exercise our liquidation preferences under the shareholder agreement. What would that involve? We'd trigger a forced sale of the company. As the majority shareholder, we have the right to demand immediate return of invested capital plus accrued interest. Given Williams Tech's current cash position, they'd be unable to meet that obligation. So they'd have to find new investors or face bankruptcy. Yes. Without our continued backing, they don't have enough cash flow to service their existing obligations. What about Rebecca's personal exposure? Marcus pulled up more documents. Ms. Williams has personal guarantees on approximately $15 million in company debt. She'd also lose her equity stake, which is currently worth about $188 million on paper. So she'd go from multimillionaire to bankrupt. Essentially, yes. I thanked Marcus and told him I'd get back to him with a decision. Then I sat in my small office, looking out at the street below where people were going about their normal lives, unaware that I was contemplating a decision that would destroy my sister's empire. The rational part of my brain knew this was a bad financial decision. Williams Tech was a solid investment with excellent growth prospects. Rebecca was building real value, creating jobs and solving legitimate market problems. Destroying the company would hurt innocent employees and customers, not just Rebecca. But the emotional part of my brain was tired of being called deadweight by the person whose success I'd funded. My phone buzzed with another LinkedIn notification. Rebecca had posted again, this time sharing an article about toxic family dynamics with her own commentary. Sometimes the people who claim to love you are actually the ones holding you back. Building a successful company means having the courage to prioritize growth over guilt. #boundaries, #growth, #entrepreneurship. 456 likes in the first hour. I opened the comments section. More praise for Rebecca's wisdom and strength. More congratulations on her success. More validation for her decision to distance herself from negative influences. Then I saw a comment from our cousin Sarah. So inspiring. I've been dealing with similar issues with family members who don't understand my goals. It's hard but necessary to leave some people behind. Rebecca had replied, exactly. You can't let other people's limitations become your limitations. Sometimes family is the biggest obstacle to overcome. I stared at that comment for a long time. Sometimes family is the biggest obstacle to overcome. I was the obstacle. The sister who'd quietly provided every dollar that built her company was the limitation she'd courageously overcome. I opened my secure messaging app and typed a message to Marcus. Please proceed with liquidation of Williams Tech position. Exercise liquidation preferences immediately. Understood. This will trigger bankruptcy proceedings within 30 days. Are you certain you want to proceed? Yes. I'll need written authorization for a transaction of this magnitude. You'll have it within the hour. I drafted the authorization, digitally signed it, and sent it through our encrypted system. By tomorrow morning, Rebecca's lawyers would receive notice that Meridian Ventures was exercising their liquidation preferences and demanding immediate return of all invested capital. Williams Tech would have 30 days to come up with $205 million or face bankruptcy. But first, I had one more LinkedIn post to make. I opened my personal profile, the one with 127 connections, mostly former colleagues from the nonprofit and a few Stanford classmates. No blue checkmark, no impressive job title, no professional headshot. I typed, "Congratulations to my sister Rebecca Williams on her incredible success with Williams Tech. As someone who has followed her journey closely, I can say she's built something truly impressive. Proud to have been part of the story from the beginning. #FamilyFirst, #ProudSister." I tagged Williams Tech in Rebecca's profile, then hit post. Within minutes, the comments started coming in. Rebecca is lucky to have such a supportive sister. Family support is so important for entrepreneurs. Beautiful to see siblings celebrating each other's success. Rebecca liked the post but didn't comment. 20 minutes later, she deleted my tag. An hour after that, my phone rang. Rebecca's name on the caller ID. "Anna," she said when I answered. "What was that LinkedIn post about?" "I was congratulating you on your success. The Series C announcement was impressive. You don't usually post about business stuff. I thought this was worth sharing. I'm proud of what you've built." There was a pause. "Thank you. That's unexpected." "Why is it unexpected?" "You know why. We haven't exactly been close lately. You've been busy building your company." "I understand." "Anna, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you ever think about what you want to do with your life? I mean, really do." I considered this question. I think I'm doing it. Working part-time at a literacy nonprofit? Living in that tiny apartment? Anna, you're smart. You could do so much more. What if I told you I was already doing more? What do you mean? What if I told you I had other projects? Other interests? Rebecca laughed. Like what? Anna, I'm not trying to be mean, but you live like a college student. You drive a car from 2015. You shop at thrift stores. What if I told you those were choices, not limitations? Then I'd say you're making very strange choices. What if I told you I was an investor? An investor? Anna, you can barely afford to contribute to family gifts. What if I told you I was your investor? The line went quiet. What are you talking about? Rebecca finally said. I'm talking about Meridian Ventures. Your lead investor. Your primary source of funding. Anna, that's not funny. I'm not trying to be funny. Meridian Ventures is a major private equity firm. They manage billions in assets. I know. I control them. That's impossible. Why is it impossible? Because you work at a nonprofit. You live in a studio apartment. You can't even afford a decent car. I can afford whatever I want, Rebecca. I choose to live simply. Anna, stop. This isn't funny anymore. Check your email. Your lawyers should be receiving some documents tomorrow. What documents? Liquidation preferences. Meridian Ventures is exercising our right to demand immediate return of invested capital. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the $205 million I've invested in Williams Tech over the past 5 years. I want it back. Anna, you're scaring me. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with me is that I'm tired of being called deadweight by the person whose success I funded. I never called you deadweight. Family success without the deadweight. LinkedIn post. This morning. 847 likes. Rebecca was quiet for a long moment. Anna, if you're serious, if this is real, Williams Tech can't survive losing Meridian's backing. I know. It would destroy everything I've built. I know. Please. I'm begging you. Don't do this. Give me one reason why I shouldn't. Because I'm your sister. You weren't my sister this morning when you posted about family success without the dead weight. Anna, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I was completely wrong. About which part? The part where you called me dead weight, or the part where you didn't know I was funding your success? Both. All of it. Anna, please. We can fix this. How? I'll make a public apology. I'll give you credit. I'll tell everyone the truth. What truth? That you've been supporting the company. That I've been supporting the company? Rebecca, I don't just support the company. I own the company. You work for me. The line went dead. 3 hours later, Rebecca called back. Anna, I talked to my lawyers. They confirmed that Meridian Ventures filed liquidation papers this afternoon. Yes, they did. Anna, this will bankrupt me. I'll lose everything. I know. Please. Tell me what you want. I'll do anything. I want you to understand that success doesn't give you the right to treat people as disposable. You're right. You're absolutely right. I want you to understand that family should matter more than your personal brand. It does. It will. I want you to understand that the person you called deadweight was the person making your success possible. I understand. Anna, I'm so sorry. I was horrible. I was wrong about everything. But you don't really understand, do you, Rebecca? Because if you did, you wouldn't have treated me that way in the first place. I understand now. Because now you know I have money. No. Because I realize I was wrong about you. Prove it. How? Make another LinkedIn post. Tell your 15,000 followers that Williams Tech was built entirely on investment capital from your sister. Tell them that the deadweight you left behind was actually the person funding your success. Anna, I can't do that. Why not? Because it would ruin my reputation. It would make me look like a fraud. More of a fraud than taking credit for success you didn't earn? Anna, please. There has to be another way. There is no other way, Rebecca. The papers have been filed. Williams Tech has 30 days to return $205 million or face bankruptcy. What if I gave you equity? Made you a public partner? I already own 52% of your company, Rebecca. I don't need you to give me equity. Then what do you want? I want you to experience what it feels like to lose everything while someone you trusted watches it happen. Anna, please. I'm begging you. Like I was begging you to stop calling me deadweight? I never knew it hurt you. Biz, you never asked. You never cared enough to ask. I hung up. Within an hour, my phone was buzzing with calls from other family members. Mom, Dad, Uncle Jim, Cousin Mark. All of them had heard from Rebecca. All of them wanting to understand what was happening. I let them all go to voicemail. By tomorrow, the business press would be reporting that Williams Tech was facing a financial crisis. By next week, Rebecca's personal brand as a visionary entrepreneur would be destroyed. By next month, the company she'd built would be gone. And I would go back to my job at the literacy nonprofit helping underserved kids learn to read. Because despite what Rebecca believed, some things were more important than being seen as successful. Though I had to admit, watching the bankruptcy notices arrive was going to be satisfying. Just like I'd told Blackstone they would be.